Hey viewers, my name's Cara. I'm your host for Tuesdays on the Pagan Perspective, and this week we're talking about prayer in pagan practices, or in our pagan practice. The question this week comes from Wyld Silverwolf, who was looking back at our past topics and noticed that in year 1 we did a week about prayer. So Dancing Rabbit and I would have already done a video on this topic 4 to 5 years ago. I don't remember what I said in my original one and I didn't go back and watch it, so that'll be interesting to do after this. So they wanted us to do sort of an updated version and talk about usage of prayer in pagan practice. Excuse me, I just woke up, I can't speak yet. Do we now or have we ever said or used prayer in our practice? And then the third is, what in our opinion could someone who's not in the broom closet but not fully outed yet do to incorporate prayer not only into their practice but into their daily life? And they said they're asking this because they've been thinking about saying prayers before each meal at work because it's discreet, and they've noticed that a majority of the prayers are for younger people, and they think that these simple prayers could easily be used by a person of any age. So if I were to make the statement, the usage of prayer in pagan practice, into a question, it would just be, do pagans use prayer in their practice? And I would say yes in a general sense, though of course pagans covers a very large group, and I'm sure that some people do not, some people do in different ways, etc. But I was actually just having a sort of a similar conversation with Sheldon from Pentacles of Pride about this, and we were talking about how he feels that in some ways people don't use prayer enough. Like, some people will just go immediately to spellcraft for what they need instead of just saying a simple prayer, and people don't really put as much stock into prayer, or they don't think of it as being as effective as spellcraft, or we don't really know what the case is. It just seems like some people don't do it. And so I mentioned something about how in the past I was sort of the opposite, where I thought that spellcraft should be reserved for sort of later and it shouldn't be done immediately for every little thing. And I had done a video response to Cole several years ago about it, and that video response has been coming up a lot lately. So this is a topic that people are talking about again now because I've mentioned that video to people so many times. And then when I went to see S.J. Tucker in Youngstown in concert this past week, I met the person who is the organizer of the Youngstown Eclectic Pagan Society, and he said that that video that I made for Cole, a video response to Cole about this topic of doing magic or not doing magic and when to do it and when not to do it, was shared on the Eclectic Pagan Society's Facebook page a while ago, so they already knew who I was. And he was like, do you have a video called Do All the Magic? And I was like, yeah, I do. That's so weird. That's like such a, I think, an obscure one to bring out, but someone had shared it. And now it's coming up again as a topic. Hi Sierra, come on. Okay, so yes, I think that pagans do use prayer in pagan practice, and I also think that people think of it in different ways. So to me, what I was saying to Sheldon was that I think of spellcraft as being a form of prayer, and I think of prayer as being a form of spellcraft. It's very hard for me now to really see them as separate because over the years I've come to see them as so much more entwined. If I had to distinguish the two, I would say that prayer is just the things that you say and the things that you think and the images that you form in your mind when you're either thanking deity or asking them for something, or just, I don't know, somewhere in that realm of asking for guidance, asking whatever it is that you need, or thanking them for something that they've brought to you. Whereas spellcraft would be the thing that I actually sit down to do with symbolism and, you know, the tools of the trade that people think of. But again, it's hard for me to even distinguish those as being separate because I use prayer within my spellcraft, and sometimes I do a spell that is just saying and thinking and visualizing, which is also what I would think of as a prayer. So it's hard for me to say what's what. But do I now, or have I ever said or used prayer in my practice? Yes, absolutely. And I have some favorite prayers that, like, if I find a prayer online, I'll write it down in my Book of Shadows or something so that I can read it during ritual. Or sometimes you buy things and it comes with a little prayer on a card or something, and I think those things are cute. I save those. I use them in ritual. And sometimes it's just off the cuff speaking to deity. So I definitely do that. And then what could someone who's not in the broom closet but not really out of the broom closet do to incorporate prayer into their practice or their daily life, such as saying prayer before each meal at work. I think that's a really good example. I also think that just keeping in mind whenever, how do I say this? Basically just keeping a conversation open and feeling able to, at any point, speak to deity or the universe or whatever that thing is that you look to for guidance. Just keeping a conversation open and knowing that whenever the thought pops into your mind, you don't even necessarily have to say it out loud, but you can take a moment, take a couple deep breaths, and you can even internally speak to them about it. You can tell them your worries, you can ask your questions to them aloud or in your head or however, and just sort of keeping in mind that that's always an option for you. And then also remembering that prayers of need are just one type of prayer, but you should also pray to give thanks for the things that you have received. And I know, like, I personally, sometimes I haven't asked for something and it'll just come to me, and you know, something will happen, and sometimes I describe it as a slap in the face from the universe kind of thing, like, hello Kara, where have you been? And in those cases, I didn't ask for it, but it showed up, and I have to stop and say, okay, I got your message, thank you, I understand, or whatever. So it's remembering that prayers of thanks are just as important as prayers of need, and they don't have to necessarily come one right after the other. Something that I love to do is sing in the car, and I use a lot of my singing in the car time for just singing musicals and things, but I also use it for chanting and praying and singing songs that are also of thanks, or singing songs that I've used in ritual before. I make up songs and poems and prayers while driving a lot. And I do agree with the other point that the questioner made, that a lot of the prayers that are written for younger people, for children, can definitely be used by older people. I love using those things. One of my favorite books that I use whenever I'm doing a ritual and I'm like, I don't know where to start, is Circle Round, which is by Starhawk and Diana Hill and Hilary Valentine. Is that who it is? Anyway, it's 3 authors. Circle Round, Raising Children in Scottish Traditions, something is the subtitle, I forget. It's on the shelf over there, that's why I'm pointing. But that has a whole bunch of little simple songs and melodies, and I play them on my flute so that I learn what they sound like, and then I sing them in ritual, and sometimes I play and sing. Not at the same time, obviously, but that book is written so that you can incorporate children into your practice, but for me it's a way of teaching me the songs in the first place, because I love music and I love incorporating music into my ritual. It makes it more powerful for me. So that's the first place I go, and that's meant to be for kids or for doing with kids. So absolutely, I agree with that. So if I could leave you with one thought from this video about prayer, okay, let's say 2 thoughts. One would just be the idea that people view prayer differently. What one person considers a prayer, someone else might not consider a prayer. So I do think that a lot of people incorporate prayer into their practice. I think this. I don't know this for sure. I haven't talked to the majority of people, you know, but I think that a lot of people incorporate prayer into their practice, but they may not all consider it prayer. It might be considered part of spellcraft, or it might just be considered, you know, I just talk to the universe, or whatever. People might not use the word prayer. And the second thought I want to leave with you is just that, whatever you want to call it, prayer, speaking to deity, speaking to the universe, whatever it is an option that is always available to you. And for me, something that I told Sheldon was, I don't see why people wouldn't do that first, because it's so easy, it's so quick, you can do it anywhere at any time, you don't need any tools for it. Really all you need is a second to yourself, and it doesn't even have to be said aloud, you know. So for me it's a lot more convenient to just do that rather than setting up a spell in the traditional sense, as traditional as I get. So just knowing that that option is always available to you, and just keeping that conversation open and knowing that you can do that. And this also brings in another topic, which I should really speak to more on my personal channel or another time here, but people sometimes ask me, how do you talk to deity? How do I begin that conversation? And it's as simple as beginning it. Saying hello, saying something. Just know that you can and keep that open. Alright, now Sierra's back. I have to go edit this video, so I will see you next week. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to be awesome, blessed be, and goodbye.